this is going to be really weird. I'm 10 minutes early. Well, 6 minutes early. And we're going to be looking at papyri. That really has to stop because that's going to drive me insane. There we go. That is PGM 12. Okay. Check I have everything working. Okay, that's it. It's super frustrating that it's all off to one side. I don't know how clear that's actually going to be in the actual stream, whether that's actually even going to work. Hello! Well, this is weird. This is only my second ever live stream and the weirdest experiment I have ever done in my life. What was I going to get? I was going to get something and I can't remember what it was. It keeps refocusing, which is going to frustrate me, I think. Although it's looking fine for me. Wow. I still can't believe I'm actually doing this. Why would I decide to stream in like the middle of the worst emotional week? Like the worst set of weeks that I'm going to actually have. I also brought actual papyri. We have actual papyrus, which I got ages ago, and I wanted to play with. So I wanted to do some experimental archaeology with it. Oh, thank you, thank you. Yeah, I think I've had in the back of my head that I wanted to do something like this. I wanted to experiment and see if it actually works. I have just, would you believe it, I've just found someone who actually does really good videos on these exact, not the one that we're looking at today, but the big papyri that I was studying for my PhD. And she actually does really good videos, and I'm like, oh, yeah, you've taken my idea. Okay, fine. Fair enough. Oh, I just needed a, yeah, Tony's watching football, and I do not want to watch the football. That would be soccer. He's watching Champions League, and I didn't feel like it. And I'm actually procrastinating from writing because I suddenly had this idea that I would actually like join in on a write 1,000 words a day thing for June because I like torturing myself or something, and I think this is the ultimate distraction from doing that. So what I've got in the corner, which I can't see it on my big screen, but I have just put up a I don't know if that's showing okay, but I've put up the alphabet so you can actually see the alphabet. Yeah, that's true. The person that I found does monthly videos that are much more lecture format, very formal. I tend to be more like, oh my god, I found this spell about what happens if your skull breaks and you need to do necromancy, how to fix your broken skull. Isn't this cool? So I'm a little bit different, I think. Yeah. She works more on the actual, like, so she works on demotic, which is extremely rare. Very few people actually study demotic. And we don't know many words. And the reason why I don't really do demotic so much is because we don't know many nouns, and I spend all of my time working with, what is this object? So if you don't have many nouns and it's just you put the, in the, on the, around the, if those are all not known, then my stuff's more physical, so I can't do that. So yes, so I'm just going to see if anyone else comes in, because obviously, like, the second stream, no one knows I exist. They're probably all going, what on earth is this? But I thought I would put up a copy of the Greek alphabet, because this is in using the Greek alphabet, but these are not actual words. These, well, they're magical words. They're not real words. We might find some real words in there. I think there might be some real words hiding in amongst this. But I was just going to do, this is like behind the scenes. This is how we do the research that we do. I think very often when you have academics come and talk to a broad audience, they do it in this really weird way that makes it seem like, oh yes, I went off for 3 years and I just sat in a room and I studied this stuff, and it doesn't seem like it has any relationship to the real world. So you don't know how the information is, how have you come to these decisions that you've made on this text? How have you, why have you made the decisions that you've made? And I wonder if sometimes that's part of the reason why people get into this mode of thinking, oh, well, it's probably aliens. She said, flagging the note, it's not going to be aliens. It's just going to be people. We do have the best gods, though. I do think the Egyptians have the best gods. So I should probably just start talking. Well, what I wanted to do was, I was kind of going to talk a little bit about my thing that I want to do, and do a little bit of the thing that I kind of would like to do and I want to get working on, but I haven't, because I've been hoping that they'd give me a little bit of money, and they haven't given me money. So okay, I'm just going to have to do this on my own in a corner for free. This is a piece of papyrus, and it is from, it's held at the John Rylands Institute, which is a library in the middle of Manchester in the UK. It is one of the 5 big research libraries in the UK, and it has tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of general papyrological material that either hasn't been translated or has been partially translated. The majority of material that we get that came out of Egypt after Napoleon showed up, and then the rest of Europe showed up and started spoiling things for everyone, taking everybody's stuff. Most of it you get in these big collections, and they have tons and tons and tons of stuff. So you get all kinds of daily life stuff. So you get censuses, you get tax receipts. So if you went, say, during the period when the Roman emperor had to be worshipped, you could go along to a temple and you'd get a receipt to prove that you'd done your worshipping correctly, which I think is the best thing. It is also the most Roman thing ever. People think the Romans are all about empire and violence and all the rest of it. Mostly it's complaining about things and receipts. They were big on receipts. So you went and collected. So we've got loads and loads and loads of these receipts, and you have receipts for taxes, you have receipts for exchanges of goods. So while we think that people weren't very, worship receipt. Yeah, you go to the temple, you go and worship the emperor, who is obviously deified because, you know, he got lucky, and you get a receipt to prove that you did it and that you did it in the correct way. You get to go and tell people, you can show it to someone to say, I did my worshipping correctly. As I say, most Roman thing ever. We have loads and loads of these little bits and pieces of daily life that tell us so much about people and what they were doing, and we get these little scraps, and sometimes we get big sections. So I'm going to switch over to, so my stream shows slightly reduced in time. So this is from the Rijksmuseum. So this is a huge papyrus. This is PGM, it used to be called PGM 12 and it's now called Gem F15. It is a very early magical handbook and it's huge. So what I will actually do, so that you can look at it, and I'm just going to hope my thing is, I am going to pop the link to it in the chat. Yeah, I know what the rules are. I made the rules. This is what happens when you... So if you want to have a close-up look, that unfortunately I couldn't get a really good close-up look, but you can have a look at the pictures of this papyrus. This is a first to second century magical handbook written in Demotic and Greek and Coptic. They knew a lot of languages and were very capable people who also liked to do magic, because that was the thing that you did. So we do have these huge pieces that come out, but most of the pieces look a bit more like this, and they're these tiny fragments and shreds that have just sat in dusty libraries all over Europe because they were sold and we don't know where they come from. So the thing that I wanted to do, and what I've asked to be given money to do, please give me money to sit in the corner and do this, is to study some of the magical texts that we've got at the John Rylands. We have a set of 5 Greek texts, not all precisely magical, so we've got a really bizarre little collection. We have an imaginary dialogue between 2 people having a magical conversation about astrology, and I think one of the participants is Plato, and that one has been transcribed, and it's the only one, and it has a little drawing on it. One other thing that the writers and thinkers of this period, the Romans, the Greeks, all the rest, they loved imaginary dialogues. They were really into their imaginary dialogues. They were into imaginary dinner parties and having these big conversations where, you know how the common thing is, oh, if you could have a dinner party and invite anyone in the world to that dinner party, who would you invite? The origins of the ancient world, and they actually ran with it, and they would have whole conversations in ancient Greek, and they would discuss things, quite a lot of our magical material that's related in literature comes from these kind of dialogues. So you've got these imaginary dialogues. We have another text that we just don't know what it is. It's just magical text, and it has a tax receipt on the back. We've got another magical amulet with a tax receipt on the back. He's sensing a pattern here. And we've got this, which is what I wanted to look at tonight, because it's currently my favourite. It's the one that's the top of my head all the time, and it's the one that I've been showing the people that I'm trying to get to give me money, and they are oh well, I'm hoping they are very interested in this, actually, because it's mostly apparently magical words, which I will come back to in a minute. But this, what we think we know, or what we have had brought down to us from the person who originally did work on it, and they didn't do much, they just looked at it and then catalogued it and described it. Whoops, I didn't want that. I wanted this bit. I wanted to scroll down this bit. So this is the main catalogue that we use online when we're working online. And down the left hand side, most people who do this, we work mostly online at the moment, and you can see the advantage of working online. If you're working with, you need to get very close to look at what things have actually been said. And we have a record of it, which it's its only sense of publication. It describes beginnings of 10 lines of a magical text, for the most part consisting of meaningless magical words. Letters are arranged in groups and are often underlined. It's broken at the top and at foot and on the right. So we know very little about what this actually was. It was, I believe, the only bibliographic reference. So the first thing we do is we come in and we look at all of this material and we go, is that going to be true? Don't believe everything you read, especially stuff that was written 100 years ago. So we have a bibliographic reference for 1952, which is Arthur Hunt, who did a catalogue of the Greek and Latin papyri, and he included this one, and hasn't done anything with it really. He's just given us a very brief 2-sentence description. We don't know where it came from. We don't know. Discovery Site Egypt doesn't tell us very much at all. It possibly is from the 3rd century CE, which is like 200. That's 200 CE. So that's quite early. That's about the time when you start to see Christianity become more and more popular. We describe it, there's not very much about the ink or the support material. We have a language code. So we need to confirm all of this. This is the first thing. I've just been marking a whole bunch of essays, and the thing that I notice is that everyone takes everything, if an academic says it, well, it must be true then. And this is a problem because they very often aren't accurate. And investigating and challenging what we know comes from looking at what other academics have said and going, actually, no, you're wrong. We're supposed to learn how to do it politely, how to say, that's very nice, but no. So I just go through some of these technical things. So we've got a reference number. It's just so that we can refer to it. Oh gosh, you can't see most of this stuff. That's really frustrating. Just realised it's all held underneath my lovely alphabet that I put up because I thought, oh, let's have a look at the alphabet. But it doesn't say anything of any particular use to anybody unless you know what all of these catalogues are that you can go and look, and you can go and find exactly the same information held in different places. The citation reference is the only particularly useful thing for me, because it's a way of me saying this is the thing that I want to work on, so they know that's what I want to work on. And if I can shrink this down, this is really good imagery. Actually, I love this. This is really good imagery. The lunar database is good in some ways and terrible in others. But it is actually, the modern imagery it's got is very good. So this is an interesting one because it doesn't have anything on the other side. My first intuition is that it might be an amulet. It might have been worn as an amulet. It's extremely damaged and has come apart. It's currently held, so I went to go and look at it, and it is currently held in glass. Like, we now put them in glass, put them behind glass. And it is actually quite small. I mean, 114 millimeters by 125 millimeters is really tiny. So it's a really small piece, and it looks, just sitting and looking at it, which is the first thing we do as a papyrologist, just sit and just kind of take it in for a minute and say, what is going on with that? One thing we know, we see sort of damage patterns, and what was quite common with these text amulets is that they were folded, and that means that the damage tends to come along the, you get damage along the seams, so on the fold line, in the same way that when you are looking at a scroll. So if we go back and look at the scrolls here, that is a line where it's been turned and turned. It's been like, this has happened so many times, it's got started to get folded at weak points in the actual surface papyrus. It started to get weaker. We've got more damage here as it's been rolled and unrolled lots and lots of times, because this one was actually a scroll. We have others, later ones are codices. The technical term for a book, the sexy term for a book. This was a scroll. As you can see, we have these damaged sections, and you might notice, because I've got my thing out there, if you can see it, that this is actually not Greek. This is Demotic, which is an era of Egyptian. And one thing that the Egyptians learned very, very early, that is, might seem obvious, but you probably only learn it in retrospect, is that it's actually much easier to handwrite if you're not actually having to make lots of tiny signs. So over time, the language on papyrus starts to look different to how it looks up on big monumental surfaces. And you can see that we have some red ink in there. We've got patches of red ink for titles, so they title each spell. Something to note about this bit, since we're doing the handbooks, so we're starting with the handbooks before we go back to the amulets, is that there is almost no punctuation at all. And this is one of the lovely facts about how language develops, is that initially there's no punctuation, and quite a lot of the very early documents that classicists work with have no punctuation whatsoever. They do not even have gaps between words. So you have to know the gaps between the words, and you have to know shorthand for terms, for example. So this is actually the person that I found, and this is a good example of this, because they very often used this is actually demotic. This is Egyptian demotic, but it wants you to repeat something twice. So instead of just saying repeat this twice, it actually just sort of says it, oh yeah, very good, do good twice, which makes it very difficult to read, because you also have they like to use abbreviations for things, which means you need to know what the abbreviation looks like. The abbreviations sometimes look like weird squiggles and not like words at all, so that can be another problem that we have. We've got, you can see the sections of underlining text. You can see places where it's been repaired. I mean, this was found and ripped up because white people are not very respectful of things and sold off in batches, and it had to be reunited. It's a very, very long story that I told on my very first live stream, which I will have to do a whole video on because it is very interesting. But you can see there are areas that are very, very, very tricky to read on this one. This one is called, this was PGM 12 again, so that's the one that I dropped a link to in the comments, in the chat. Okay, so let's go back and look at my papyrus. This is going to be my papyrus. My ambition for this papyrus is that I am going to try to identify all the letters. Not tonight. I'm going to try and identify like just a few of the letters just to give you kind of an introduction. I'm probably just going to do like an hour or an hour and a half, because grief makes you so tired, and I've basically been on the sofa asleep all day. It's not been very pleasant time at the moment, but I did want to come on, and it makes me feel happy when I defeat things that terrify me, and I do them anyway. So my ambition is that I will be able to put together what is called an editio princeps, because in classics we still like to use fancy, pretentious terms for things, and that's the term they give to producing a very first edition, which would get hopefully published in a journal. I have a secret ambition that I would like to get something published in a journal that I only ever call by its abbreviation ZPE, because I cannot say the German. The German is it's so long, so I call it, and it's generally known as ZPE or ZPE. I would like to get this, so I would have a description of it. You'd have a full piece of research into, as close as possible, where it came from, whether that is a market, was it sold, did people buy it, some Westerner bought it perhaps. There's a very complicated, tricky history to the identification and removal of artifacts and papyri in Egypt, because after you have this succession of white Western invading groups coming in and exchanges and different types of control, for a while, if you were a native Egyptian, if you were a local, you did not require a permit to go digging and investigating. And if you, I assume, have somebody land in your world and they're making your life difficult, or you are trying to survive and you see an opportunity, being able to actually go out there and go and get stuff and then sell it to white people is, it's a way of earning a living. It's a very good way of earning a living in those kind of straitened circumstances. So you have a lot of material that comes onto extremely popular markets. Everyone goes down. This is peak Egyptomania. So everyone is hugely into Egyptian stuff in Britain, in the West. and they all want to get a bit of it. There's secret parties where people eat bits of mummy to live forever. So if you've heard of that billionaire who's trying to live forever, yeah, that's not new. That's been going on since the beginning of time. And it used to be, it was 19th century, it was eating mummies, and we lost a lot of really valuable material because of the decisions that were made about what was considered valuable. Like last night I watched Indiana Jones, and that is all about going after big fancy gold things, which were very popular when archaeology got started. Archaeology does not have a very good history. It is deeply, deeply problematic. And so is papyrology. A lot of these materials were just dug up and they were sold en masse. They were taken out of the country en masse. Once the permit system changed, and anyone was going in and digging things up, they would bring out, and they just removed them from their site. So if you have seen people like Minuteman on YouTube, he's really good at showing you how archaeology works now and how careful we are about where things come from. And he often says, if we don't have an origin point, if we don't know where a find spot, where this thing came from, we cannot say anything really about it. That does not hold true so much for papyri. And the reason is because it's writing, and we can do some other things to sort of say, we can date it within 100 years. We can use radiocarbon dating. We can use multispectral imaging. And one thing I'd like to do, if one of the two projects or both the projects get off the ground, then I would like to kind of do some videos where I actually show how we do this imaging, because we can see hidden text. We can see text that's been wiped away, that's completely lost. It's incredible the stuff we can do. And that is all hugely exciting. So because we can kind of identify things with papyri, they sometimes have dates on them. Not modern dates, they have Egyptian dates on them, or Roman dates, but they sometimes have dates on them. They have recognizable words. They refer to particular things that we can trace back to particular situations. Papyrology falls into lots of weird niches. To give you a wonderful example, there's a guy who only traces donkey sales in Egypt. There was a specialist market for the buying and selling of donkeys. The donkey is the very basic car of the ancient world, quite expensive. One thing I want to look at, because I see a few cases of donkeys being, or asses being sacrificed as part of ritual spells. And I am very interested to know whether that actually happened, what the context is for that, because that was like taking your car and setting it on fire for a magical ritual. That's a big deal. But we have these guys. I only found this guy because I was tracing where these donkeys might have come from as part of my PhD, and I found this guy who all he does is look for donkey receipts. It's mad. So we have him doing his stuff, and I sit around doing my magical stuff. He is all about that ass. He's just like, I'm like, wow, imagine getting to the end of your life and having just been to a funeral and thinking about this a lot, and you have someone who stand up and say his contribution to the understanding of donkey sales exchanges in Ptolemaic and up to late antique Egypt was just, he is the number one guy. We'll miss him. We'll have to someone else will have to take up that flame to carry on the tradition. because we need that kind of stuff. It's amazing, the stuff that we need to know about. And it does tell you, there's a line in Raiders of the Lost Ark. Good for him. Yeah, I absolutely agree. Good for him. He's gone all the way. There is a line, because we watched Raiders of the Lost Ark last night, and there's a line where the French guy says, you know, this watch is worthless. I just got it on a stall, and it's nothing. But then if you bury it in the ground for 2,000 years and you dig it up, it is the most precious thing. It's worth millions. It's, you know, these things are priceless. I've been looking at sales of very early biblical texts on papyrus from the last, that have been going up for the last year, and it's been incredible, just seeing how much they go for. I mean, you can understand why biblical texts, but we've had a series of thefts at the British Museum of items like this, which were just they're just like little items that he thought the guy who was stealing them and selling them on the archaeological black market thought, no, you know, no one's going to notice this thing's gone missing. But it was the equivalent of someone's bit of tat from from 2,000 years ago, and it's like now it's all the rage. It's this huge thing that they produced. So I'm wandering all over the place here, so I'm going to try and focus a little bit. What I'm going to do is we'll have a look at just I'm going to see if I can move that up, because it looks like you can't see the base. There isn't much to see actually on the base of this piece of papyrus. The bottom, the lowest section, is extremely broken. It looks to me like it might have been folded in half, sort of horizontally. So it's been folded in half horizontally. The description from Hunt indicates that the left is the starting point, and that if you look at it, you can see it looks like Greek is written from left to right, so you can see we have a nice margin. It's fairly scrappy writing. If you are, you know, if you have a look at some of the Rijksmuseum pictures, you'll see that the writing is actually much better. This is fairly rough writing. This is, yeah, there you go. My handbooks suggest that making text amulets was not particularly ritualized. You know, you don't have to murder a donkey to get it to work. You can just write the magical language and it will work. And that was what someone would do. The people we think would have made something like this, I mean, it could have been done by somebody who was just doing stuff by themselves, someone with a bit of writing experience copying something down from somewhere. It could well have been put together by survivors. The priests, if you know anything about ancient Egypt, you'll know that they had a huge temple system with huge amounts of land, and it got successively destroyed by the Romans. So priests needed a way to live, so they had to, you know, make money and live in a very tricky system. So they would often perform these small rituals and provide healing. This is a world where you have no modern forms of healing. You know, Galen, great guy, he was absolutely on the nose for a lot of things, way off on others. You know, he could recommend you take opium for one thing and then say swallow a stone for another thing, and it, you know, it could be a little bit unpredictable. So don't go to a doctor if you actually want to go well. I think that's a Blackadder joke. So what we have here, And you can see, so this nice modern 699 from when they originally catalogued it. I, at the moment, don't know where it's kept. What I have to do as part of this project is to dig into the archives. So one aspect of this work is to go back into the archives of sales and ledgers, and when was this received, when was it first looked at, did it come as part of a collection? If it came in as part of a collection, which very often happened, well-to-do Victorians gave people large quantities of stuff on their death. So if that happened, where did that come from? I have to go and look at their records. You have to discuss, you to go and see if you can find those records. Do they still exist? Is there any other material? One thing, my supervisor found it's an important biblical amulet with very, very early Christian writing on it. That's 6th century Christian writing, so not that early, but a really important quote from the Bible before it became the Bible, and it was an amulet, and it had been stored in a plastic envelope, which is, it turns out, is really bad for papyrus, just as you wouldn't want to sit around inside a non-BPA free plastic envelope for your life, neither does a piece of papyrus. So that had not been very good for it. Nowadays we put them behind glass. So this one has been glassed, but I need to know, what kind of treatment has it had beforehand? Where has it been? Has anyone else actually looked at it? And doing all the obvious things, you measure it, you do a very detailed discussion of the type of damage. We even go into the details of, there are these 2 strips here and there's a cross strip there. There's this on the verso and there's this on the recto. Sorry, that's technical speak. I shouldn't do the technical speak. The recto is the bit that you write on first. I don't think it's worth getting the papyrus out for that, but the recto is easier to write on than the verso. So the recto tends to get written on first and then the verso afterwards. And that's one way that papyrologists use of sort of saying, well, we think this writing came first, because why would you write on the difficult side of the paper first? So very occasionally we get issues where if you can do really intense things to the ink, you can possibly narrow down a date, but you are looking at only really being able to date within 100 years with radiocarbon dating, and 100 years is a huge amount of time for someone writing just one piece of paper. So that's kind of a problem. And when it comes to handwriting, we have a tautological problem, because over the years, there are about 200 odd years of papyrology now, of the study of handwriting, this paleography, the study of handwriting, ancient handwriting. And it's very easy to fall into the trap of thinking that because a style was common, a particular style of handwriting was common, that all other things must fall into that period because they have that style of handwriting. And you can kind of see where the problem crops up, because you end up with lots of papyri being dated to a particular time because the handwriting looks a particular way, it has a particular style. But then what if they're from a different period? The only thing tying them to that period is the look of the handwriting. And if the handwriting periods overlap, which they very frequently do, or you have very rough handwriting, this is an example of really quite rough handwriting. It's very loose, very scrappy, it's probably a bit rushed. It's not going to make it easy to date at all. Other things we can use to date are the type of Greek, and very often the type of mistakes in Greek, because I don't get ancient Greek right. I'm not great at ancient Greek. I will put my hand up and say I'm not really great at ancient Greek. But the ancient Greeks and Egyptians were also not brilliant at Greek. I have studied Greek. I can see why. It's a very hard language to be good at. For a start, you have 3 voices rather than 2. So you have the passive voice, the active voice in modern English. In ancient Greek, you also have the middle voice for other occasions, very specific occasions, but other occasions. And you've got to learn a whole lot of extra words. All of your verbs have to have a whole extra voice in them, which is really hard. So not the easiest of languages to learn, especially if, to give you an idea of what it was like in that period, you have what are called grapheons. Graphea. And they were sort of like scribal offices. They would be outdoors because this is Egypt. But they're sort of like an office where lots of scribes work together. And they take in work and do lots of work. You also have freelance scribes who sit on the street, and that's all they do all day. People come up to them and say, I need this receipt written, can you write it? And their understanding of Greek is enough to do that kind of work, but it isn't enough to do literature. They can't really write books. They can't write, or we sort of assume that they can't write fiction. The people who were writing magical handbooks used to get dumped into this category of not particularly literate. Well, literate, but they have a very good functional literacy. So they can write out things that are understandable to other people. And of course, if you pay someone to write a receipt, you need at least to be able to read it to understand that they're actually saying what you want them to say. Because we do have a case, and I need to look this up and clarify it because I keep remembering it in my head and then I don't remember it accurately. We had a receipt that we had for a very long time that was apparently about the sale of a cow. Now, someone retranslated it, and my memory of the retranslation was fairly recent, was that it was actually about a wedding and not the sale of a cow. So I think we all ought to be very glad that anyone involved in that particular incident has been dead for 2,000 years, because that's quite embarrassing, really, to have thought that. You can imagine getting a Sainsbury's in 2,000 years, someone picks up a wedding document and thinks it's a receipt from Sainsbury's, or the other way around. Or I just went out to Walmart and now people think I've gotten married. It's just, this is how tricky it is. I have people who say to me, but surely everything's been translated. Why do we need to retranslate things? And I'm like, because we keep getting it wrong. Because we don't know. We have to keep reassessing. We have to keep going back through things and checking them. I think a more famous example is the putting that sort of, it would be easier to put a camel through the eye of a needle. And it's not camel, it's rope. And if you think about it for more than 2 minutes, it's like, why a camel? Why are we putting camels through eyes of needles? No, it was a rope. It's a piece of rope. It got mistranslated, which happens an awful lot. So I've done all of this talking and I haven't even got really into the papyrus yet. I am not sure how far I'm going to get into it, but let's draw it up nice and close and have a look at some of these words, I think. So I can get, and I think I can, yeah, there we go. So I'll look at the top. My initial feeling is And I think the reason why he has said that mostly this is magical words is that there are bits that look Greek. There are bits that look Greek, and there are other bits that really just don't. They look like magical text. I've spent the last 7 years, actually no, it's 2014, isn't it? So I have spent the last 10 years looking at papyri and magical words, and you get to sort of recognize what they look like. So I want to build a database of magical words. I think that would be really useful for us. They don't mean anything, they aren't actually a language, and they don't come from, you know, they might be inspired in the same way that when I write Amnar, my words are inspired by actual words that I've seen, but are not that. They had an invented language that was how they spoke to the gods and to get the gods to do what they wanted. And there is nothing more dramatic than being in a cemetery, standing on a tomb in the middle of the night in front of the full moon, shouting incomprehensible words. That is what magic has been for probably since we invented the technology of magic, since we came up with the idea of getting things via magical means. We've probably been doing something along those lines. So why would you wear an amulet like this? Well, we have some initial clues. So I did some work. I went to meet the curator, and I hope he doesn't mind because he noticed this. It wasn't me. So I always like to give credit where credit is due. We have some scrappy lines. We've got some lines there that Ekeon, which, although it's Ekeon pro, which pros, because that could be Ekeon pros, which would be something towards, potentially, I don't know, early days. Then if I drag down here, we have a very interesting phenomenon. This cross here. So this is not a magical symbol. It appears to be, when we first looked at it together, because we got this out and we had a good long look at it, because it's a really interesting amulet, we think it's a Christian cross. We might be wrong. It might be a magical symbol, and I would want to go and check that. You have to check everything, you have to test everything, every theory you have to go to 10 other people and have a discussion to make sure that you're getting it right. But it could be a Christian cross, which is really interesting and quite, I think, unusual to have a Greek Egyptian tradition of magical words with a Christian symbol. We have a lot of overlap with different religious and ethnic groups in Egypt at this time. We do have Christians, we do have early Christians of various stripes. Egypt has always been a very syncretistic place. People who wrote and worked in magic would have picked up, you know, you use the latest thing that's around. Quite a lot of my texts sort of will reference Anubis and Moses, for example, because you want to get everybody in, you know, I can kind of, you almost imagine that they saw their world, their supernatural world, as being peopled by all of these guys. All of these guys are everywhere. You've got Imhotep hanging out with Moses, hanging out with Jesus, hanging out with all sorts. So it is interesting. It's not something that I have personally seen. I would expect Christian symbolism with Coptic, which is the Christian, sort of a more Christian form of Egyptian. Well, that's going to get the Coptic experts, the Coptic scholars on my case, because they don't like it. It's not a distinct language, it's something else. It is really interesting. I've been showing that to everyone I show this papyrus to, for purposes of saying, please give me funding to go and do more research on this. I want to know if we can find out more about this, how common this is. Are there other examples? Was everybody doing it? And I just thought my cat was about to cause trouble, but she's not. So, and this is in the lower part of the text. There's what appears to be a Christian cross. We have one word, merokranon. Kranon, I mean, that looks like an accusative form of something, but it could be a magical word. There'd probably be lots of Greek scholars, if they were watching this, going, oh my God, don't you know what this means? And it's like, not off the top of my head, no. I will be absolutely, hold my hand up and be honest. And part of the reason why I'm really cautious is because we've got 3 words above. We have, and I'm now going to refer to the lovely piece of extra graphics that I put on this. So we have what appears to be an alpha that might be a beta. And I'm really putting a pin in that. I'm not sure if it's a beta. I will have to look at other examples of that B, see if I can find other betas on this piece of text to check that it isn't something else. So the other thing we have, oh, has my screen gone fuzzy? No, it's come back again. We've got both of us pummeling the streams tonight. So we have this letter, which there might be something going on there. Or it could just be a beta, could just be a badly written beta. That looks like a lambda. So, and then another alpha. As you can see, you've got this script there and there. And that gives us abla. You see, it sounds like abracadabra already. And this is essentially what this is. What we think this is at this early stage is that this is essentially like the equivalent of abracadabra. It's a fantastic rhyming word. They liked rhyming words. Rhyming words are magical. Abla, natha. So we have the N. Nu. Oh no, it's not, is it? Yes, it is. It is. It's N. Nu. They wrote in all caps. And then we have alpha. And this one tripped us up a bit. So we were looking at this one. And I really wasn't sure. Theta is the best guess. It might be a theta. I would probably, let's see if we can find it. We don't. Difficulty is that there are not very all the letters I want to see. There are a couple of betas. That gives us an example of what a beta looks like. So it does look like that is a badly written beta. That is just a badly written beta. It's written very quickly by the look of it. And so we've got abla, natha, and then we've got what looks like acha, and presumably it goes on. So you've got lots of these occur throughout magical texts. I'm going to see if I can find an example, because I brought my nice out-of-date copy of the Greek Magical Papyri. Oh, and I open my page straight to hello, Indy. How very on brand. Of course, someone who studies ancient Egyptian magic has a cat who also shouts. Indy's going to come and join us now. Hello. What do you want to say? Has he fed you? No? No, Daddy is downstairs. You can ask him to feed you. See what we do? I don't want you to see this spell, because this spell involves cats in an unpleasant way. Yeah? Why don't you go downstairs? Ask Dad to be fed. So anyway, I was going to talk about rhyming text. So in this spell, we have, this is actually a spell for, this is a sports spell. This is for ensuring that, that's rude, Indy. I'm talking to the good people of Twitch. Yeah. There are many important things to say. This is life with a cat. Like this new thing is bopping me on the nose. Yeah, I actually, so full confession, I was going to include PGM3 in my research, and then because it involves doing something unpleasant to a cat, I decided I wouldn't. And I was very relieved when I discovered that there was a way of using the corpus that I wanted to use without actually involving that particular spell, because I didn't like writing about it. Yeah. Yeah, I know. You can go downstairs. He's downstairs, and ask him to feed you. I'm entertaining the good people of the internet. Yeah? Okay. Okay. I'm probably doing these too long silences, so if I actually get to record this and download it, then I'm going to have to edit all of this out. Cat paws. So we have a whole string of words. We have Io-Erbeth, Io-Pachabeth, Bolkosabeth, Apomps, Apathanax. See, if you need good words or good names for things in your fantasy setting, this is the book. This is absolutely the book. This is it. I got names from this for various gods, because the words they come up with are absolutely fantastic. Some of them I can't read at all. There's one that goes on there for 3 lines. I'm not even going to attempt to put that anywhere. I don't know if that was even said. But my original point, that the tendency to go for these rhyming forms stands. Okay. Coming up to an hour. So this is the bit that I was sort of unsure about, is that we have this trio of rhyming words potentially to be spoken out loud, and then we have the merocranon. Hello. We have merocranon, and then the Christian symbol, and then this, we get down below it, as you can see it carries on, so we're missing quite a lot of useful and interesting text from this It is very interesting that the text carries on after the cross. It does appear to be text. That looks like it might be either an eta or probably an eta, because I can just make out a line there, or what's called a lunate sigma, which is a sigma that looks like a mu. Just say it down there. So we've got 2 there. So we have as an example. Is that a mu? God knows what they're writing down there. That's like when you're writing at the very end of your page. And we've all been in those lecture theatres where you're trying to make notes and you're off the end of the page. By the look of it anyway, because that does look like the end of the papyrus. And we have lots of eta examples in that final word, and I am not sure what to make about that letter there. But we have this cross, so if that is an eta or a lunate sigma, then it's carrying on with regular text on the other side of the cross, which might tell us something really interesting. So yeah, I'm very excited by this. I think what I'm going to do is, having achieved my first 1 hour, I am going to stop there, because we have the big reveal of there might be some Christian symbolism in this otherwise Greek-Egyptian piece of work. I have a cat who is not going to obey me and go downstairs and ask her daddy for her dinner, so I'm going to have to feed her now. But I hope you enjoyed that, and that it was helpful and useful, and you learned something about ancient magic. You now know that if you want to really make an accurate cult, emperor cult, you need to make sure that there are receipts given out every time they go to worship, and that rhyming words are the key to making magic work if you want to go and scream on the top of a grave in the middle of the night. So thank you very much for joining me, and I hope you had a really good time. Yes, get yourself a receipt printer. You need a receipt, you need lots of papyrus to make receipts, and you need to light cars on fire to make your fortune happen. These are the things that we have learned. Okay, so thank you very much, and now I will go and try and get OBS to switch off. Thank you very much. Bye bye.